HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in our relationship to the Creator, does the Creator need us? Or does the Creator want us? Is there a need? Does the Creator need us to fulfill the mitzvahs, to fulfill the obligations, the commandments? So the answer is as follows. B'gavoy, on the highest level, the answer is no. On the level which is called Atzmus, the essence of the Creator, so to speak, which is beyond description, beyond definition, beyond infinity. On the level of Atzmus, of the essence, of the source of light, we cannot speak about any type of need. The definition of a need is that something is lacking, something's missing, and you need something, and through the need there's ashlama, there's a completion of this chesaron, of this lack. And of course we cannot say that the essence of the Creator, the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though mitzvahs misyachas ala atzmos, even though mitzvahs are connected and associated with even the essence of the Creator, but the essence of the Creator is, of course, the ultimate being of beingness. And there's no possibility of talking about it. It's kafir almost to say this, that it's heresy to say that the Creator is missing something. There's nothing missing, therefore there's no need. Like the pasuk, the verse says in Eov, in the book of Job, Im chatasa matifel boy. If you have sinned, what kind of effect do you have him? V'rov b'shachem atasloi, im tzedakah matiten loy. And if you've done righteousness, what could you give him? So, in terms of the Creator, the essence of the Creator, atzmusa yizbarach, the essence of a God kaviyachol, in a manner of speaking, there's certainly an impossibility to talk about a need. There is no need. Yet, on the lower levels of reality, which means in a construct, in a mindset, in a reality that's called post-symptom, post the contraction of the infinite light, or the assumed observable contraction of the infinite light withdrawal within itself, from that place of symptom, from the place of contraction, which is the observable reality, the way we see mitzideinu from our perspective, not mitzidoi, not from the perspective of the Creator, where there is no symptom, but from our perspective, where the symptom feels real, where it feels like there's a contraction of the infinite light. We don't see the infinite light in an observable way, the way it's in its full manifestation. From there, we could talk about the possibility of a chesaron, of an absence, and a hashlama, and a completion of this absence. We talk about the purpose of creation, for example, use this as a metaphor. There's the Tamei Abriya, there's a purpose of creation. There's multiple reasons why it's brought down in Eitz Chaim, in the writings of the Arizal, that the reason for the creation is Kedei Lahet Lebruyev, to give goodness to the creation, to the creators, to what is being created. The Akir Gudloisav, and they should know its greatness. It's brought down in Eitz Chaim, Shar Kolalim in the beginning. Or in the language of the Zohar, Yakir Gudloisav, or the language of the Zohar is Begindish Demoidin Loi, that they should serve him, we should know him. The Zohar says in Parshas Play. So there's various different reasons that are offered in terms of the Bria, of the reason for creation. But the truth is that when you speak about the idea of a reason, when you say the reason for this is, that the reason why the Creator created is to show its infinite greatness, that He can be manifest, that the infinity can be manifest in finitude, or that there should be a creation that should bestow goodness upon them, or that there should be a creation that understands and knows that there should be a relationship with otherness. When you say that there's a reason for creation, that in itself means that there's something kaviyachol, as if there's a chesaron, something that's absence. And the reason completes that thing that is absent. There's something that's missing. There's no yakir gdulai, so if there's no knowing of this greatness, or there's no otherness that recognizes greatness, and therefore the creation it's almost a compulsion. It has to be done because there's a need for this to occur. So the need is something that is completing something that is a chesaron. There's an absence, and the need fulfills that absence. But on the deepest level, you can't say that, Because like I said before, we can't say that the Creator has a need. If we say that the Creator has a need, that means it's something that's absence. If we say that there's a reason for creation, and the reason is X, Y, and Z, that means that the reason sort of predates or predicates the purpose of what is being created for. If I say I need to do this because of this, so the because actually comes before what I'm doing. Same thing when we think about this in terms of the time mitzvahs, the reasons for mitzvahs. If I say the reason for a mitzvah, the reason for doing this mitzvah is because of something else, that means that something else exists before the mitzvah. There's something else. And the mitzvah comes to complete that other thing, to reach that goal. But if you say that the world is created because of the Torah, not that the Torah was created because of the world, that the mitzvah doesn't come because of the world, but the Torah, it predates the world. So there's no reason for the mitzvah. The reason for the mitzvah is post facto. Once there's already a mitzvah, you can talk about the reason for the mitzvah. The same thing also when we talk about the creation. We can't talk about a reason for creation only once the creation occurs. In other words, once there's already a creation, once there's already a tzimtzum, once there's already a contraction of the infinite light, and the various 4 different levels of what exactly this contraction means, in the most important way of understanding it is that it's not literally, and it's talking about only in the oir and the light itself, but not in the atzmos. This idea that there's a contraction of this infinite light, or the perception of this contraction of infinite light, once that already occurs, we can start talking about reasons, because then it's already the world as a place of chesar and a place of absence. So what's the quote-unquote reason for creation? There cannot be a reason for creation, because once we say there's a reason for creation, that means that there's a chesar, there's an absence in the Creator, kaviyachol. And that absence caused, because there's a reason, and there's a reason for something to be done. So that absence caused that it should be done. But if you say that, then you're saying that there's something that is a chesar, there's an absence within the Creator. That cannot be said. So why did creation come to be, if that's a question? And the answer, the deepest answer of the question, is the language of the Medrash and Chumah, the Medrash in Parshas Nasai, which is made famous in the Tanya, is that the reason for creation is the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Creator, had a desire. A desire, and this is what the Rabbi Chabad and Samach Vav and Sheikh Amud Sheish and Mekut Sichas Chelik Vav and the Aras and Shmais, it speaks about this in a great length. That Nisava, the desire, the way it was phrased is it's a desire, it's a want, and it's a taiva. And if a taiva fragment kashas, and on a desire you don't ask questions. So the simple way of understanding this is that it's a divine desire to create, because the Hashem had a desire for it to be a dir b'tachtonim, that there should be a dwelling place of His being, of the essence of the Creator within creation, within a creation. And on a taiva, you don't ask a question. You don't ask a question on a desire. Not because you don't ask a question on a desire because it's beyond your comprehension, because you cannot understand. In other words, there is a reason. We don't understand the reason. Because the essence, a taiva doesn't have a reason. What is it? There's no kasha on it. There's no logic. It's not a rational thing. What does this mean? Let's try to explain this. What this means. Creativity. When we think about creativity, when you say the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem created the world, creativity is an act of want, not of need. There's an overflowing of self. The overflowing of self, the externalization of self, is a process of creativity. When we think about all creativity, not just the way Hashem created the world, God created the world, but all creativity doesn't come from a place of need. A person says, I need to create something. Creativity is an unfolding and an outward expression of self that comes from the fullness of self. The fullness of self bubbles up and is expressed. That's what creativity comes from. Creativity doesn't come from a place of need. If someone needs to create, someone says, I'm going to write, or I'm going to create a poem, or I'm going to be creative in a thought process because I need it, then it's not creativity. Creativity comes something that comes from the deepest wells within a person, and this overflows outward. That's what creativity. So when we see this in the human experience, when we understand creativity. And for my flesh I see God. This is a very important principle in the Agdama Shara Oyer, Gitalia, in the beginning of the book of the Gates of Light from Gitalia, Joseph Gitalia. He explains that the whole process of understanding creation, and the whole reason why we can even understand any of the Seder Yishtalshalos of the divine devolution of light and from energy, from pure energy to matter, is because we see the same process within our own consciousness, with our own development of the human being, with our own lives. Same thing also the Rabbi, the great Rishon lives in Paskirs in Provence. Wrote on the Ram, also wrote a commentary on Sefer Yetzirah. We're not 100% sure that it is actually his commentary, but some yichus to the Ravid. And he writes the same thing also in the beginning of in Perek Aleph Mishnah Aleph, that the idea of B'sar Ech Salakha, we understand everything that we understand on the macro level is the way we understand on the micro level. If we understand something that works in the micro level, then we can reflect on that idea and say that same truth exists within the macro level, exists within our own consciousness and our own reality, in our own world, on the level of nefesh. Then we can understand that it also exists within time, space, and within the entire creation process. So what is creativity? Creativity is an overflowing of self that's expressed. That is the taiva. So when the Rabbi Shab says that if a taiva fragment kasha is on a desire, you don't ask questions, not because we don't understand, and and your thoughts are not my thoughts, and therefore it's beyond you to can think this ideas. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that the definition of a taiva, of a desire, comes not from a place of a reason, and not from a place even from a need, but a place that just overflows. It's almost like inevitable. That's the place of the taiva. It comes from a place that's deeper than a reason, deeper than an understanding, deeper than a need. That's the source of creation. That's the same thing also in the purpose of the creation, and therefore we can understand also in the purpose of Bereshit Shel Torah Yisrael, the purpose of creation, the purpose of doing the mitzvahs and doing the practice and being connected to Hashem. What is the purpose? So again, in the essence, there is no need. It's a want. It's a desire. It's a creativity. It's a taiva that's beyond reason, and then it overflows into the expression, and then once it begins this process, sort of like we say in the way that we understand the process of creation, which is through first the infinite light reduces itself or retracts itself and withdraws, and then there's a process of it's for post-Simpson. So the post-Simpson, in the post-Simpson reality, in the post-contraction reality, we could talk about chesaron. In the beginning of Talmud Spheres, in our Pnimi, he writes this very clearly. He writes that after the tzimtzum nischadesh az bechidus hachisar v'nisava mokim ponel l'tikunim, that after the tzimtzum, after contraction, once already we talk about the light that's contracted, infinite light that's contracted, again, from our perspective, contracted, and there's no revealing of the infinite light, then we can start talking about that something, there's the creation, there's this chadesh, there's a new creation that reveals itself. It reveals itself that there's a chesaron, that there's some type of absence, even though Shimon Nagbat Tzimtzum and there's a day of Essefiras Agnuzas and Atzmos. But we're talking about in terms of our understanding, it's post Tzimtzum. Then we can start speaking about this idea that there's an Eschadish, there's something, a new revelation, a new type of revelation, even though of course the mucker of that has to be within Atzmos itself, but there it's not from a place of lack. Here it shows itself as a place of chesaron. So therefore, because of that, in other words, there's a pre-Tzimtzum and a post-Tzimtzum reality, as it were. And of course, they're simultaneously true at every single moment. It's not a time reality, because time itself is a creation. So we can't say post-Tzimtzum and pre-Tzimtzum means before and an after, but it's a continuous state of reality in the present moment, as we're experiencing reality. There's a post-Tzimtzum reality and a pre-Tzimtzum reality. So therefore, Chazal, the language of the sages, the language of Chazal, we have definitely language in Chazal, for example, where it speaks about some type of chesar, some type of absence, that kaviyachol, we're completing something in this process. The Sifir writes, and Rashi brings it down with regards to karbanos, that reich nechoich, that it's a pleasant odor for above. So the language of Chazal, nasa ruach shamarti v'nasa yitzayni, that nachas ruach is like a pleasure that's received that I commanded, and you've done my will. So something is gained kaviyachol by Kadosh Baruch Hu. There's something that's received, something that's something that's filled by the kaviyachal, something that's added almost. The same thing also you find in the Gemara in Shabbos. And Rabbi Kiva in the Gemara talks about in the Sugya Matan Torah, the Gemara says that when it says Yigdal no koyachad, that Moshe Rabbeinu said, Daven, it says Yigdal no, become greater, expand, augment the power of the name of Hashem. So the Gemara says there that Hoyalach Lazarni, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, you should have helped me. He says, Rabbi, but they said, you should have helped me, which means there's some type of helping that we're completing, we're doing something for Hashem, that Hashem needs us, so to speak, in some capacity, and there's some completion. Same thing also in the Zohar. In the Zohar, this is written many, many times, this type of language. For example, the Zohar in Parshas Chokaisai, when it says, Vasisam Oisam, and you shall do the mitzvahs. So the Zohar reads this, not only Vasisam Oisam, you shall do the mitzvahs, but Vasisam Oisim. That you should that you will create me, kaviyachol. That Hashem says that by through doing the mitzvahs, you're completing me, you're doing something to me, you're giving to me. You're giving me nachas ruach. You're azreini, you're helping me, you're giving me pleasure, you're making me. So your actions matter so much that you're actually completing me. Later on, in the history of Teres HaKabbalah and Teres HaSoid, there's a teaching that was brought down by the Avodas HaKodesh, Rabbi ben Gamai. The roots of this idea is already brought down in Brazil, in Bir HaSesfiros, which is the Talmud of Yitzchak Saginar, a student of Isaac the Blind, who's the son of the Ravid, which I mentioned before, that there's a concept of the idea of Avodah L'Tzorech Gavaya, that our Avodah, our work, our spiritual work, our work that we do in this world, is for the purpose, for the purpose on high, that there's something on high that's affected by our actions. Later, the Shalal Kaddish, who's from Prague, the Meir Ben Gabi lived in Spain, who was from Begurusha, Spain, in 1492, after the Jews left Spain, or expelled from Spain. And this is a little over 100 years later, the Shalal Kaddish brings us up many times, very often, this idea of Avodah Gavaya, and Teres Chassidus is brought down many, many times. This idea of Avodah L'Tzorech Gavaya, that Avodah is for the purpose on high. So there's certainly this idea that there's a completion that is done through the work of man. Taking the language of the Sifri that we said before, Nachas Ruach Shamarti V'Al Naser Etzoni, when it says that Nachas Ruach, there's a pleasure on high, Shamarti, that I commanded, and you fulfilled my obligation. So the Mamor of the Marash, and the Rasha brings this down as well, also in Sabachvov, in the beginning, that he reads the words Nachas Ruach Shamarti V'Naser Etzoni in a very, what's called a hyper-literal level, which means you read actually the text in itself, not within context, which is something that we spoke about many times. This is something that we find very much in the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and Teres Chassidus, which is to read the Oasis himself. He says Nachas Ruach Shamarti V'Naser Etzoni is Nachas Ruach Shamarti, you're bringing great pleasure on high that I've commanded you. V'naser etzoni, and you through the Ma'aseh Mitzvah, through doing the mitzvah, you're actually complete my ratzon. But not only that, v'naser etzoni, not only you're doing my ratzon, but you're nasa, you create my ratzon through the fulfilling of the mitzvah. We create the ratzon Hashem kaviyachol. We create the will of Hashem. So these are very, very high levels of actually really doing something and affecting something on high. So to say this in a very simple language, everything we just said in a very simple language, is that from the super high level, which is the level of Atzmos, it's kfir, it's chalil to say that our actions complete HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Creator needs our actions, that there's some type of chesar chas shalom, to say such words, that there's some type of absence or lack, and we're fulfilling a certain lack. But post-Simtzum, where the idea of neschadish, the bechinas ha-chesaron, where there was a neschadish, there's a renewal, there's a new creation of the idea of chesaron, then of course we can talk about the place of need, and the place where our actions affect on high and is needed on high and completes on high, whether it's for nachas ruach, whether it's for pleasure, or azreini, or yigdal nahal, literally to add, to augment, to create, to create something, vasisam, that there's some type of action that we're doing that really affects on the highs, on high. So that's post-Simtzum. Now to say these two things together would mean that there is, and because we're saying these two truths are simultaneously true at all moments, and it's not just the flow of time, that there's a pre-Simtzum and post-Simtzum, that this happened 1,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago, this happened afterwards. That's not what we're saying. They're always simultaneously two true things. And in spiritual principles, we know that there's never a heder, there's never something that's absence, that is lost. So there's that reality and this reality are both simultaneously and paradoxically true at every single moment. In the way we can understand it, because our brains work in a very sequential and linear way, the way to understand this is that the need comes from the place of want. The need is the lower level. The want is in the higher level. As the pre-symptom is the want, the post-symptom is the need. The pre-symptom is the fullness of self and doesn't need it, and it's just overflowing. And that's the purpose. That's why creation emerged, and that's the reason why there are things. And again, reason, quote unquote, because it's not reason, it's not rational, meaning it's not linear. And it's not because of something else outside of itself. There is nothing outside of itself. It's the fullness of the full self, of the ultimate creator, of the ultimate being of creator, which is no place of absence, no place of lack. The post-symptom is a place of need, where we're completing certain things through our actions. To say this in a sequential way, just because that's the way our minds understand things, is that the need comes from the place of want. Now let's translate this 1,000 levels and understand this. And this is very, very powerful to understand this. Because when even in human interactions, interpersonal reactions, when I say I need you, that's very unattractive. Because when I need you means there's something I'm missing something, and therefore I need you, and I'm very dependent, and there's a certain level of codependency. And it's very unattractive for someone. The higher way of living is I want you, I desire you, I create you. Let's say, use the same language we talked before about this overflowing of self. There's a certain type of want. And because of the want, I need you. Not I need you and on its own, but the need comes from the place of want. Which, to say it in the level of like the creation story, would say that the taiva, which is the desire to create, the want. But then we'll say yakir l'loisav and begin to shtamoidim loy, and then there's all the reasons for creation, which is also the place of the need, because without another being recognizing the creator's greatness, then there's no recognition of the creator. So that's the purpose of creation. So the need comes from the place of the want, just like on a super high level in terms of creation. And the same thing also with our own creation and our personal lives. We have to feel in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and our relationship to Hashem, and the way we experientially understand this and experience these two ideas, is that we are so needed because we are wanted. And the want created the need, not the need creates the reality of what we're needed. And when someone, and this like in an interpersonal relationship, when two people are in a marriage, for example, in a deep relationship, and one says, I need you because I want you, and therefore I need you, the connection is so much more wholesome and so much more full and so much more alive and expansive than a relationship that's based on need. So our relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that Hashem wants us, which is much deeper than needs us. Hashem wants us. It's a taiva, it's a desire. And because of that want, Hashem also needs us on the lower level. And so we're both needed and wanted, but the highest level we're wanted, and that's even deeper than needed. Have a wonderful day. Sei gesund.